So strategic analysis is a 4-step process. Number one process, it comes with marketing and competition. Second parts come with the location and site analysis. And then we do political and legal analysis. And the last comes the financial analysis.
Welcome. You're listening to the Apartment Investing Show. This is where you'll learn how to start or scale your apartment investing career. Your host, Adam Adams, challenged himself to do a 100-day raw vegan diet, but he gave up on day 91. Adam and his guests will show you how to create residual income by investing in apartment communities. Now, here's your host, Adam AAA Adams.
Welcome back to the Apartment Investing Show. I am your host, Adam AAA Adams, and I'm excited about today's episode because we have Meetu on the episode with us, and she's going to share with us how do we do real, actual strategic analysis. She's got her PhD. She also is in with the CCIM. She's almost completely done with the CCIM as we're recording this, but of course, COVID slowed it down because we can't take the test yet, and that's the only step that she has, which is great because that CCIM and her natural tendency to be educated by getting that PhD is exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about strategic analysis for your apartment buildings. When you're buying these communities, what are the 4 things that you really need to be looking at? And so we're going to dive into that with Meetu. And it's Bhatnagar, right? I want to make sure I'm pronouncing it right. Okay, perfect. So we are ready to go with you, and I'm going to grab your bio. I'm going to pull the bio right in front of me and share a couple things with the listener or with the Facebook Live watchers. So she is a syndicator, an asset manager, an investor, a business owner. She's transitioned recently when she was doing childcare because that was the easiest way to be able to watch your kids and work. So it's kind of interesting. So she was doing that, and she ended up purchasing that business and then recently selling the business, the childcare business, and she's involved in 800 doors, approximately $80 million of real estate total. And actually what she manages is 418, almost 419. Interesting story. She's not just buying a single family house to get from 418 to 419. She's doing a value add on the property, one of the properties she owns, which she under management, she's managing about $40 million. So she went from India to Bangkok to the US, and in 2010 she started purchasing real estate, actually in India, but while living here. And then I'm trying to think, where did you go from there? You purchased the real estate, and then you started growing. You got your child care center, and now you're where you are, which is incredible. And I want to go through that story because the story actually helps us with the subject matter, because we're going to be talking about how to do that analysis. So I'm excited. Meetu, is there anything I missed about your bio that you should mention to the listener?
Yeah, I am also licensed. I am a licensed realtor. I am with Coldwell Banker Commercial. And I am one of their top producer.
You're one of the top producers.
In Irving, Las Colinas office in 2018.
Awesome. And where do you live now?
I am in Irving, Las Colinas only, in Dallas, Texas.
Dallas. Great.
Yes.
Great area. And I know we have a lot of mutual friends in the Dallas area, and It's just exciting to have you on the show. We have a couple of things in common, which is actually interesting because most people wouldn't know that I portrayed these 2 things that we both have in common. One of them is that I'm kind of shy. I'm a bit shy, and not everybody knows that. But the only reason that I do podcasting and hosting events is because that I know that it benefits the business. I know that it gets us exposure. But before we got started recording this episode, Meetu said something to me that I was like, me too. Good play on words. Meetu said that like when you're at a restaurant or a bar and people are kind of connecting and mingling, that we sometimes feel like we're like, oh, I don't know if I should go and like interrupt them. I don't know if I should go and put myself out there. But I have the exact same thing. And so I think that's inspirational, because you were willing to come live on Facebook for this podcast interview, right? And here I am. I don't think I'm the most eloquent guy, but I'm hosting the podcast and putting myself out there. And I think that's a big lesson for the listener as well. The second interesting thing that I think we have in common is neither of us are super into football. And I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh no, I liked you, Adam, but now that you don't like football, I'm not going to go. But I usually watch or I usually attend the what are those events? It's usually the first weekend of February. It's called the Super Bowl. That's right. I forgot but I usually go to attend the Super Bowl parties, but I'm like, who are these teams? Anyway, I'm embarrassed to even mention that, because people are going to judge me. Why don't you like football? But interesting fact, Me Too also isn't big into football. Is that right?
Yes, I am not, because I grew up in a country where main game is cricket. So since my childhood, I have been watching cricket. So if anyone asks me about cricket, I know everything. But football, when I came here, I know that people love football. I tried to learn it. I even asked, like my 7-year-old kid, he was able to, contemplate more about the football, talk more about the football. I said, hey, baby, you do excellent in this. Can you teach me? He took me to his PS4 and, we played the Madden game. But I'm so sorry, I couldn't even get it.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so let's go here. Me Too. Let's start by just talking about your transition from the childcare, selling that, moving into passive investing, joining a program, learning how to invest, and working to get your CCIM. And I think that's going to bring us into the what people are here to listen for is, what are the 4 things that you need to do with your strategic analysis for buying your next apartment community, because these 4 things are essential. So let's start.
Absolutely.
You tell us the story of your first transaction, how that got you into working as one of the owners of what is it called? Child Care Center, and then how you transitioned into what you're doing now, having $40 million under management.
Sure, would love to share that. Thank you for giving me an opportunity, Adam. Really appreciate and feeling honored to be here with your viewers. So my journey started, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I decided to go into Child Care Center because my primary focus was my family. So I believe, that if this particular business is Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I got to spend with my family. So this is how I was inclined toward the Child Care Center. So my very first transaction, I was not a pro in real estate. So when I identified my business, I was focused on financial analysis. So I did financial analysis, and then I did some SWOT analysis, like where am I now and where I can go in the future. So keeping all these 2 things in mind, I went and did the acquisition of a business. Now, my childcare center business was similarly what we do in real estate business, in the multifamily business. We do acquisition of a valued property. We upgraded the building. We bought new assets like the security cameras, new buses. We changed the employees, bring in better resources, and that resulted in drastic increase in the revenue. So when I did the acquisition, I forgot to do marketing and competitive analysis. So what is the demographic like? I didn't have any idea about it. This was my first time doing the business, so I really didn't go into it. I was just focused on financial analysis. So financially, I did really very good in that business. Within like 6-7 months, I was able to increase my revenue from $500,000 to $800,000. Most challenging part was the people, the demographic, and getting the proper resources, because childcare center comes with a lot of responsibilities. So after 6 months working day and night, and when my family was suffering, I did a lot of hard work. Somehow, did very good in that business, and then I decided of expanding my business, because if you just have one business, you cannot make that much money. So if you want to scale, so you should have like 4 to 5 centers. So initially, my retirement plan was I will have 4 and 5 centers, and that will be my retirement. But when I did a lot of due diligence, and then I decided to go for real estate license, because I was from a different country. I really don't know how the systems work here. And unfortunately, my first transaction with my real estate professional was not that good. So he didn't educated me like he should have done. So probably he was not having very good understanding of it. So I thought I will not depend on anyone. I'll do my own due diligence. I decided to take my license. That's how I end up into real estate. And from there, I started working. My friends, I never marketed myself, because I went with the intention to increase my own portfolio. I didn't want it to sell the real estate for other people. So I didn't want it to be an agent, but my friends, they started approaching me, asking me to find them something that is worth their investments. So I worked with different kind of people, and that's how I got attracted towards real estate. I came in contact with some multifamily apartment guys. They were really doing phenomenal over there. I joined it, but I was not very passionate about it. Because the return I was getting in my childcare center was far beyond what I was getting in multifamily. So even though I wanted to invest passively, but my heart and soul was in my childcare industry.
Mm.
And my thing was that God has given me a very beautiful life. I really wanted to make a difference. So I was not at all, focused in all these metroplexes. I wanted to own a daycare centers where there is not much enough education out there, because I knew I have an education background and I can give something to the community. My focus was never money and all that. I always wanted to do good to the society. So doing all this, and then I was thinking of expanding, and then that's how I realized I got so busy with my real estate business and my childcare center that I have to. My son was in 11th grade, and now he is going to college in 2 years. So my thing was like, doing all this setup and the businesses and my real estate business, I was not able to give time to my son. So I decided to exit my childcare industry so that I can focus more on my family. This is how my journey started into real estate.
Good stuff. I had a couple of questions. I didn't write them down. I hope I remember them. But one of the things that you said is that you wanted to give back. Your main goal was to help other people and to give back. And I just wanted to say that's awesome. That's another thing we have in common. Like that's the big thing for me as well. Another thing that you said was that. Oh, and I just lost it. Darn it. I'm sure I'll get it back here in a moment. That's so funny. We're alive on Facebook, and that's when I'm going to forget what I'm saying. And if we weren't live, I could just push pause. I could just be like, "Oh, here, let's just remember this," and we can cut it all out. But nope, this is going out to everybody. Totally fine. All right. Then other thing that you said, what was I going to say? It was important. So you're working to analyze. You said that you missed. You did all of the financial analysis. Okay,
and the SWOT analysis.
Wait 1 sec. That's where I want to go. Is the financial analysis? Oh man, darn it.
SWOT analysis.
Yeah, I keep having it on the edge of my tongue, and it is important. Give me just a second. Well, let's just go here. The financial analysis. You said that when you bought that, you did the financial analysis, but you didn't do like the market and like competitive analysis. And so let me just ask you to express, like, you mentioned that as something where you were like, oh, it's too bad I didn't do this. So what was the reason?
So the reason was that I went into a demographic where it was hard to get resources, and
Hmm.
that particular place was like 1.5 hour drive from my home. So my daycare operations was open for 12 hours, so I cannot be there for 12 hours. And these kids, they are my responsibilities, right? Their parents trust us, so I wanted to give the best services to them. That was the reason day one I went there. I put on security cameras installed, and I was having the access on my cell phone. So even if I'm away from the center, I know what is happening on my center. But getting educated employees and all those resources, it was a challenge over there. And I did overcome. I paid extra what was the market rate. I paid 10 15 grand extra to get that better resources, but those better resources were not appreciated by the local people. So and they end up quitting up the job. So that was a pretty good challenge for me. And yeah, that's why I say I really missed on that. So next time, when I thought, like, when I am thinking of doing anything else, I'll better do my homework. I'll do a lot of legwork upfront so that I don't face such challenge in the future.
And to the listener, we're absolutely going to share these 4 things to help you know how to better do your homework.
Yeah.
Me too. I do remember what I was gonna mention. It was you were talking about scaling.
Yeah.
At one point, you said that you were going to purchase 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. And maybe if you ended with maybe 4 or 5 of these, that was going to be your way of ultimately retiring. Now you ultimately
Absolutely.
sold it, but I think that idea definitely scales into multifamily as well, because oftentimes somebody says, what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy a rental or 2, but like you can't really do a lot just with 1 rental or 2. You need to scale. And
Absolutely.
there's a couple of ways to scale. Number one is to take a long time. We're buying 1 house and then 1 house and then 1 house and then 1 house, but that could take 100 years if you're buying 1 house per year, and that's pretty good for most people. But if you wanted to scale within multifamily, which is exactly what this show is all about, is apartment investing, how much easier it is to scale by buying something that already has 100 doors. One time you buy that 100 doors, and now you have about 418, almost 419. Can't wait
Yeah.
to get into that story. Units that are that you actually manage. So let's just talk a little bit about scale before we get into all 4 of these strategic analysis that really come from your education in CCIM. So what have you been able to do ever since you sold that? Do you feel like you're in a better place because of it?
Absolutely, I am in a much better place, because what I observed, that multifamily, sorry, the daycare business is 6 months. This is half yearly business, because so I went into this business because my family was my priority. So what I observed, every 6 months I was under the stress, because every Christmas there will be an enrollment that will dip, and every summers the enrollment will dip. And all my expenses will not go down, because I
Mm.
still owe the mortgage, I still owe the taxes, and I didn't want to cut off my employees. So one of the reason I went into this, I could have bought a franchisee and could have done it much easier, but because I'm from an education background, I really wanted to support the teachers, right? So I didn't go for franchisee, so that I can have that 7 to 10% that I will be eventually giving it to my franchisee, which will have more control on my business than myself. I'll better give it to my employees, so they have a better life, and they are more passionate about the business and their job.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, has scaling been easier in the multifamily business compared to the business that you had with childcare?
Yes, yes, because of course, in the childcare center, I realized that I need to be at the center. Not that often if I have a good director and assistant director, but this is such a competitive business. Anytime my director leaves a job, it will be a threat to my business, because the enrollment dips, and the employees also move. And so I need to be physically present at my center, more involved. While in multifamily business, it needs involvement, but if we can afford a third party a professional management, a property management, it doesn't need that much involvement. All it needs is a big business plan, a better business plan, and how to execute that, which I'm pretty good at it.
Nice. All right. Well, let's move in to the 4 things that you need to analyze to really understand if an opportunity is right for you. And
Absolutely.
so what's the first of 4, Me Too?
Sure. So we are, we are diving deep into the market and to the sub-market. We are looking into the employers. What kind of employers are there? Are there more people coming? And is there a positive population growth? So all this come into marketing and competitive. And how's the competition there? So how's the vacancy rate over there? And all these, it comes under marketing and competitive analysis.
Great, because if you don't have an idea of what the jobs are, what type of are they families? How much are they paying? Are they getting their what is that? RUBS, ratio utility billing
Absolutely.
system? Are they doing that? So this is like in the first thing that you're going to look at.
Absolutely.
What is
and
the job growth? Demographics.
And the demographics, yeah.
Yeah. And so this is really the main thing. And I say this to clients as well. I say start by selecting a market, like selecting a market and a sub-market. Do your due diligence first on areas, like why are you here? And you mentioned something. Are the rents going up? Are the rents going down? Are people moving in? Are people moving out? These are things that people neglect. They instead of having this be the very first thing that they do, which is exactly what you're suggesting Me Too, what they do instead is they're chasing cap rates.
Absolutely.
They're like, oh, here's a 10 cap in a really crappy area. I want it because it's a 10 cap and it must be better than an 8 cap or a 7 or a 6 or a 5. And I think it's really interesting how you have put this is the very first thing. So let's go into the second thing. It's location and site analysis. It's even a step further than understanding just the submarket. So what are you looking for, and what does it mean for number 2?
Okay. Yeah. So in commercial real estate, we are big about location. So I will say it's not only about location. It's about location, it's about visibility, and it's about access. What if the location is very good and it's not easily accessible? What if it's not visible, right? So all 3 comes in the location and site analysis. It should be very visible, accessible, and then how does it look like? Does it have something that is alarming the site? Is this something where we can improve, or there is no scope of improvement, or it will need a lot of revenue? So is it worth going for or not going for?
Which makes sense. You're talking location, how it just really funnels down to the micro parts of the location. And what I took away from what you said is how important it is that your site is actually visible. Like it makes complete sense. If you're driving around and you are the tenant, we're talking about multifamily here. Absolutely. You're the tenant, you're the potential resident, and you can see one apartment community that's right there off the side of the road, but you can't see the other one. And you're definitely going to go to the one that you see, because people got to know you, like you, and trust you. And how can they like you and trust you if they don't even know you? So they got to be able to see where you are. You also mentioned it has to be accessible, which is actually really interesting, because there's some. Growing up, I've gone to all sorts of places, Walmarts and Costco's and different grocery stores and gas stations. And the gas stations where you have to flip U's and you have to go turn left out of oncoming traffic, and all of this it actually deters me from using that gas station or for going to that Costco or Sam's Club or whatever it is. And so you're talking about that for your apartments, because if it's dangerous to get out, or if you have to flip a UE to get in, but this other one, it's just easy access. You just turn right in, and it makes more sense. And so you want to be thinking of this when you're buying your actual apartment. So that was number 2. Let's dive into number 3, and let's talk about the political and legal analysis. And let's talk about what is it, and what does it mean for how to analyze, and what are some takeaways for number 3?
Yeah. So number 3 is political and legal analysis. In that we see, how the system is like. Do they want the developments? Are they giving incentives to the employers to come to the city and create more jobs and other stuff over there? Because whenever there is a job growth, there will be people moving, and there will be more demand for the housing. And then also legal analysis, it comes, what kind of zoning is there. So all these come into the zoning and the political system, and are they pro-growth? They want the growth to happen there or not. It comes under political and legal analysis.
Yeah. I was looking at an apartment community in the city of Boulder, Colorado. Boulder, Colorado, this is like the real estate is skyrocketed. You're buying things at 2, 3, 4 caps. They're not cash, or maybe they're not even cash flowing. But it's interesting because the political and the legal analysis is right there, because there's a lot to think about when buying in a place like Boulder, Colorado. And some of them are, number one, the people that live there right now, they don't want anyone else there. So the people that are living there right now are telling the government, don't let anyone else build. We don't need any more people. We don't have enough water. There's nowhere else to build. We don't want apartments. All this kind of stuff. The billionaires are pushing out the millionaires in that city.
Absolutely.
So there's that, which is exactly what you shared. And then the second thing is that there's things called setbacks, and how many levels you can go, and how many people, how many units can be on a certain amount of square feet, and how much parking needs to be there. And so if you understand the legal, then that allows you to understand some really creative ways of adding value to a property. Just for a quick example, this property that we were looking at in Boulder, Colorado, the city would have allowed it to have more units than we actually had on it. So there was an opportunity to cut into some of the less used space and put I think it was 20 more units. And what's interesting about Boulder, Colorado is the cost that it would take to put in 20 units at around $170 per square foot. All of a sudden, it's worth $500 per square foot. So it's very beneficial in a city like that to build more units if it's available. And you only know that if you do what Me Too just said, which was to understand the political and the legal analysis. What is it zoned for, etc. Awesome stuff. So that was number 3. Let's dive into number 4 and the final one. This is kind of where everybody else just goes to. Everybody else just says, "Oh, if it passes financial, we're good." They forget all the first 3 steps. So just talk to us about some takeaways for financial analysis.
So financial analysis, since this particular asset class is one of the most favorite asset class of all the investors out there, considered as most recession resistant. So there is a lot of competition, and sometimes people end up paying more for the property. Some people, just because they have some tax incentives, they are in between 1031 exchange and all, they end up they don't look at the cash flow. They just have to do transaction and all that. While my thing is that I particularly look for hybrid properties. So hybrid property are those properties, where there is a cash flow and there is an appreciation in there, where I can add value and increase the revenue. So, when I was thinking of doing the acquisition of a multifamily, I was looking into projects. So I came across few certain opportunities which were cash flow, but they were not having any value add to it. So what happens, because we were observing the market, there was inverted yield curve, and we were thinking like there will be a recession soon. And if not the recession, there will be a price correction in the market, right? So I was not looking for a cash flow or just the value add, because the value add, if it's not cash flow and we have to sit on a property for a couple of years, it will be hard for us to survive. So I do look into the properties that are hybrid deals, where there is a cash flow and there is an appreciation. I just, because we are always looking towards the positive effects. We don't positive side of the numbers. We don't look at the negative side. So for example, in a multifamily unit, if I increase my revenue by $100,000 and it's a 5 cap rate, the property value is increased by 2 million. While if my revenue is decreased by 100,000 and the cap rate is the same, I lost the value of $2 million. Is it worth doing all those stuff, buying a property which doesn't have? So that's what I focus in financial analysis.
Super, super cool. Last week, Facebook reminded me of a post that I made 3 years ago. So
wow.
I think it's so funny. You know how Facebook says 1 year ago or 5 years ago this thing happened? So last week, Facebook posted something that says, "Hey, Adam, we care about what you've shared in the past. And 3 years ago today, you made a post about the hybrid thing." So
wow.
I didn't end up sharing it, but it's really interesting because that was a day that I remember hearing a lot of different, I guess, educators, people that are kind of influencers that were sharing that the only way to do this is that it's already cash flowing. They were saying all you got to do is have a yield play, they called it. You've got to have something that's already cash flowing. And then there were some other educators and influencers that were saying all you have to do is have something that you can add value, like a fix and flip. You're going to buy it, you're going to reposition it, and it's done. And so there's these heavy repositions, and then there's these just yield plays only. And it's like one way you have a whole bunch of risk, but a potential for a good upside. And the other way you have very little risk, but very little reward. And so
Absolutely.
I remember saying exactly what you're sharing. I want to do something that's a hybrid, where you buy it where it has some cash flow, but it also has some meat on the bone. And I think that it's interesting that you brought that up, because that's the way that Blue Spruce feels. We want to buy things where we're safe when we start, but we have a good upside as well. So really good stuff. Let's dive into this part of today. We are over time, by the way. Me too. Are you okay on your time, or do you need to go?
I'm good. No, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I want to sum it up with these two last questions for your advice for the listener. But first, a quick word from our sponsor.
What's Blue Spruce Boardroom? It's Adam Adams' private inner circle program that helps serious investors take their businesses to the next level with 24/7 access to our private Facebook community, exclusive mastermind retreats held at luxurious resorts around the country, bi-weekly coaching calls, education, support, and monthly meetings. This is the full immersion you need in order to get from where you are to where you want to be in your real estate business. When you join Blue Spruce Boardroom, you'll become close with Adam and the other members of this exclusive inner circle. You'll meet accredited investors, deal sponsors, high net worth key principals, as well as real estate influencers. The perfect combination for you to take your business to the next level. Apply today by following the link in the show notes.
And we are back with Me Too. And the first question that I want to ask you is this. I have a listener. There's somebody on the Facebook Live. There's somebody on the podcast watching the YouTube right now, and they've never done a deal. They want to. They've done everything that they can to do a deal, or they're excited about it. They've even educated themselves. What advice do you have to them to be able to get their first ever deal?
Surround yourself with the like-minded people.
Surround yourself with like-minded people. Love it. The second question that I have for you, Me Too, is I have a listener who's been doing this for a while. they may have already closed on their first 100 unit. Maybe they've closed on 2 or 3. You've got 800 in your portfolio, passive and active combined. What does that listener who's already closed on a couple, who already kind of has some experience, what do they need to do to go to the next level?
Okay, so it's too early for me to give suggestion to those individuals, but I would humbly request them that, they should appreciate their team and the people around them, because this is a team business. You cannot do it alone.
Love it. Appreciate your team. Show gratitude to your team. I have a couple of virtual assistants, and one thing that I always try to do is just show them gratitude, just appreciate them and tell them what they're doing. And sometimes it's hard because you got so much happening, but that advice for your team, finding a way to keep your culture up and keep everybody understanding that they're contributing. I know that if I wasn't told that I was contributing to my team, I would leave. And so We've got to think about that too. As we're scaling our own team, get rid of some of that pride, bring in that humility, show the gratitude, the appreciation that our team members do. Because like you said, without them, we have nothing. We literally have nothing. Awesome. Absolutely. I got a lot of value out of this episode, especially when we got into that last part of those 4 things. You gave a ton of awesome feedback on how to analyze based on the market, the sub-market, the competitive analysis with other properties. You gave a lot of information on location, and the site analysis and exactly what to look for if you're visible, if you're accessible. You gave a ton of information on the third one about the political and the legal analysis, making sure you understand your zoning, making sure you understand if that market is growing or shrinking, if they're willing to let more properties come in, etc. And the fourth one was the financial analysis, which it seems like everybody else kind of just only does the financial. They forget about all these other highly important parts that you've learned over time. And being able to understand if we're going to be able to raise money. And I love that feedback that you gave. There's people that think about just a yield play, people that just think about the value play, but you found a really awesome hybrid in the middle where it's safe and there's upside. Love it. Thank you for coming on. I'm going to let you go. So until next time, my friend.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate it.
Think outside the box. Thank you. As a reminder, any investment opportunities mentioned on this show are for accredited investors only. And if you're interested in working with me and my team, then go to realbluespruce.com and click Get on the List. It's that simple. Just click Get on the List to start passively investing. This has been an episode of the Apartment Investing Show with me, Adam Adams. All rights are reserved. And if you haven't done so already, then make sure that you absolutely smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next episode.